Dad brings home rescue dog, discovers why baby won't stop staring at him. Your support absolutely lights up my world. Before we jump into today's incredible story, please hit subscribe. It helps me share more heartwarming tales with our amazing community. Here's my favorite part. I personally respond to every comment because I genuinely love connecting with you. So drop a comment telling me where you're watching from right now. I can't wait to hear from you. Now, let's dive into this extraordinary adventure together. The baby sat motionless on the threadbare carpet, her fingers wound tight around the frayed edges of her pink blanket. At 11 months old, she should have been reaching for everything, babbling in the musical nonsense of early speech, turning her head when called. Instead, she existed in a cocoon of silence, her dark eyes focused on nothing, seeing everything and responding to none of it. Daniel pressed his palms against his temples, the weight of months of worry crushing down on him like stones. The living room felt smaller each day, the walls closing in around their collective helplessness. Afternoon light filtered through dusty blinds, casting prison bar shadows across the floor where his daughter sat, unreachable as a distant star. "I'm telling you, something's not right," he said, his voice raw from countless similar conversations. "She doesn't even look at me when I call her name." Julia knelt beside their daughter, her movements careful and desperate. She reached out to stroke the baby's cheek, her touch feather light, as if anything stronger might shatter the fragile connection between them. "She's just late. Some kids are late." The words tasted like ash in her mouth, hollow reassurances she no longer believed. Daniel's fist came down on the coffee table with a sharp crack that made the picture frames jump. "Late? Julia, she's not a bus. She's our daughter, and she's silent. Do you get that? Silent." The sudden noise caused their daughter to glance up, her eyes wide and startled. But within seconds, she retreated back into her private world, leaving them standing on the outside looking in. Daniel crouched down, his knees protesting against the hard floor. He snapped his fingers gently near her face, the sound crisp in the heavy air. Nothing. No flicker of recognition, no turn of her head, no spark of curiosity. She might as well have been carved from marble. "The doctor said to wait," Julia whispered, her voice breaking like ice over deep water. "Give her time. Pushing her won't. I'm done waiting." Daniel's jaw clenched so tight it ached. He stared down at his daughter, this beautiful, unreachable child who felt more like a ghost than flesh and blood. "It's like she doesn't even see us." Julia flinched as if he'd struck her. Her hand tightened protectively on their daughter's shoulder. "Don't say that. She's ours. She sees us. She must." The patience in the world. Something about the calm intelligence in that gaze made Daniel's chest tighten. He'd never been an animal person, but desperation had a way of making impossible ideas seem reasonable. Julia appeared in the doorway, her hair disheveled from another sleepless night. She glanced at his screen and frowned. "A dog? You think a dog is going to fix this?" "I don't know," Daniel snapped, exhaustion making his voice sharp. "But maybe she needs something else. Not us. Not doctors. Something alive that doesn't judge, something she can connect to." Julia shook her head, disbelief etched in every line of her face. "We can barely handle her. And you want to add an animal? What if it bites? What if it scares her?" Daniel's voice rose, carrying all the frustration of months of unanswered questions. "She's already scared, Julia. Scared of everything. Even us." His fist hit the table again, rattling the salt shaker. "I won't just sit here and do nothing." They fought until their voices were hoarse and their words had drawn blood. Julia accused him of chasing fantasies, of refusing to accept their reality. Daniel accused her of giving up, of surrendering their daughter to the silence. Their argument bounced off the walls like thrown stones until a soft cry drifted from the baby's room. Both parents froze, guilt swallowing their anger whole. The next morning, Daniel drove to the shelter alone through streets slick with early rain. The building smelled of disinfectant and wet fur. Hope and abandonment mixed together in equal measure. A volunteer led him past rows of kennels filled with barking, whining, pleading animals. At the end of the row sat a large cream-colored dog, perfectly still, watching Daniel's approach with steady, intelligent eyes. "That's Max," the volunteer said. "Gentle boy. Family had to move. He's confused, but sweet." Daniel crouched near the kennel bars, staring into those patient brown eyes. The dog didn't bark or pace or beg for attention. He simply tilted his head slightly, as if asking, "What took you so long?" For months, Daniel had looked into his daughter's eyes and seen nothing looking back. Now this dog, with one glance, made him feel truly seen. "I'll take him," Daniel said, his voice hoarse with sudden emotion. The volunteer blinked in surprise. "Don't you want to?" "No, I'll take him now." On the drive home, Max sat quietly in the back seat, his tail curled around his body like a protective shield. Daniel caught his reflection in the rearview mirror and found himself speaking to those patient eyes. "You'd better be worth it," he muttered, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. "Because if you can't reach her, no one can." Julia stood on the front porch when he pulled into the driveway, their daughter, perched on her hip, arms crossed like armor. "You actually did it," she said, her voice cold as winter wind. Daniel opened the car door and coaxed Max out onto the driveway. The dog shook himself, his cream-colored fur catching the afternoon sunlight like spun gold. The baby, still nestled in Julia's arms, stared at this unfamiliar creature with wide, startled eyes. Daniel looked from his daughter to the dog, his voice rough with exhaustion and desperate hope. "Yeah, I did, and we'll see what happens now." Max stepped into their living room and stopped in the center of the carpet, his cream-colored coat glowing in the filtered afternoon light. He sniffed once, a soft sound that barely disturbed the air, then sat with the dignity of a king surveying his kingdom. Daniel opened his mouth to speak when he noticed something that made his breath catch in his throat. His daughter had frozen completely. Her tiny fists clutched the pink blanket so tight her knuckles showed white through her delicate skin. Her legs, clad in rainbow stripes, had gone rigid against the floor. She wasn't crying. She wasn't turning away. She was staring with an intensity that seemed to burn the air between them. "Daniel," Julia whispered, shifting uncomfortably under the weight of what they were witnessing. "Look at her." He leaned forward, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird. For 11 months, his daughter had drifted through life like smoke, her eyes sliding past people as if they were shadows on the wall. Now those wide, dark eyes locked onto Max with laser focus, as if he were the only thing that had ever existed. She didn't blink. Her small chest rose and fell in sharp, quick breaths that seemed to keep time with Daniel's racing pulse. "She never looks at anyone like that," Daniel whispered, afraid to speak too loudly, afraid to break whatever spell was unfolding before them. "Never." Minutes stretched like hours. The dog tilted his head slightly, and the baby's eyes followed the movement as if choreographed. Her gaze traced every shift of his expression, every twitch of his ears, every subtle change in his posture. Julia's voice cracked like breaking glass. "It's unnatural. Why is she staring so hard?" Daniel shook his head, wonder and fear warring in his chest. No, it's not unnatural. She's connected." His voice trembled with emotions he couldn't name. Then it happened. The baby opened her mouth and released a tiny sound, shaky, deliberate, and more beautiful than any symphony. Her gaze never wavered from Max's face. Daniel lurched forward, nearly falling in his eagerness. "She spoke. Julia, she spoke." Julia gasped, her hand flying to cover her mouth. No, she's just making noise." But then Max gave a low whine, deep and resonant, vibrating through the floorboards and into their bones. The baby's eyes widened even further, drinking in the sound like desert sand drinks rain. She babbled again, louder this time, her voice reaching toward his pitch like a flower turning toward the sun. Daniel's vision blurred as tears he didn't know he was crying spilled down his cheeks. He clutched his head, his mind reeling. Why him? Why only him? The baby giggled suddenly, a sound like silver bells that pierced straight through to Daniel's soul. Her tiny hands slapped the blanket in excitement, her face blazing with joy, so pure it was almost painful to witness. She laughed and babbled again, eyes fixed on Max as though he were the first living thing she had ever truly seen. Daniel's chest constricted with a realization so overwhelming he could barely breathe. "Julia," he whispered, his voice cracking like thin ice. "She's not staring because she likes him." Julia froze. "What?" Daniel's eyes burned as the pieces fell together with devastating clarity. "Think about it. She never reacts to us. Not to our voices, not to music, not to toys. But him. His sounds are lower, deeper. The words hung in the air between them like a revelation written in fire. She's locked onto him because those are the first sounds she can actually hear, Daniel continued, his voice breaking completely. She's been staring because she recognizes it. For the first time in her life, she's hearing something clear. Julia staggered backward, tears streaming down her face like broken pearls. Oh my God, Daniel. That's why she won't look away. That's why she's responding. He pressed his fists to his eyes, shoulders shaking with the force of his sobs. We thought she was lost. We thought she was broken, but she was just waiting for a sound she could reach. The baby squealed again, reaching toward Max with tiny, grasping fingers. The dog lowered his head carefully, allowing her to sink her hands into his soft fur. She laughed, high and pure and devastating, the sound ripping through Daniel's chest like lightning. He collapsed to his knees, overcome by the magnitude of what he was witnessing. That's the reason. That's why she stared. She can't hear us, but she can hear him. Julia dropped beside him, wrapping her arms around his shaking shoulders. We almost missed it, she whispered. We almost missed everything. Together they watched as their daughter and the patient dog continued their wordless conversation, her eyes never wavering, her small voice rising again and again to meet his gentle responses. The silence that had haunted their house for months finally cracked open, replaced by the most beautiful sound either parent had ever heard, their daughter's laughter mixing with the soft whines of understanding. Daniel sat on the floor, stunned and devastated and grateful all at once. Finally, he understood the reason behind his daughter's relentless staring, and it changed everything.